Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Thank you for tuning in to this week's podcast. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. You guys absolutely rock. We had a couple really fun events this month. We did a Zoom for our book club members. And then we did a live Q&A. Mm-hmm. And those are always, I feel like those are almost
love those,
the best thing that we do.
I love those. The interaction is great. I wish more of you would jump on board so we could get to know you in the same way. And excuse my squeaky voice. I was away for a couple days, breathing in the wonderful, wonderful salt air. Got back to Pennsylvania, and look what happened.
Got in the pollen, back into the pollen area.
And back, and now I'm all again. So, pardon me. I did have a good voice for 3 days. I just think that means I need to live at the beach. What do you think?
That's maybe an indication. We got enough patrons. You could buy that condo that you always wanted on an island.
No, I just want a little cottage, a little shack. One of those tiny houses would do. I'll do that.
So anyway, thank you guys. We do love and appreciate you. We absolutely love our patrons, and we do hope that we get more. The benefits are really cool. The different rewards for different tiers. And we just hope you sign up and help support this podcast and keep it going.
And pray along with us, if you will. We are in prayer over this podcast, asking God to give special blessings to this podcast, that it will reach many and that it will reach the ones that really need to hear. So please join us in prayer also.
Absolutely. So this is one that I kind of hesitated to talk about just because we don't know a whole lot, but I feel like it's significant enough that we need to do an episode on it. But it's the recent Department of Justice, DOJ, announcement that they're opening an investigation into the Southern Baptist Church. I think that is a huge deal.
It is huge. It's something that I think if it plays out even a little bit like we hope is going to be absolutely amazing. Is that okay?
Yep, it was pointed down almost at your belly button there, so we got it pointed at your mouth.
I got it at my mouth now. There, we're good. We're all good.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really significant deal, and if you remember back in 2018, there was the release of the grand jury investigation in Pennsylvania into the Catholic Church, and that created shockwaves across the world.
Yeah, it did.
And that also sparked an investigation by the DOJ into the Catholic Church. Now, that one kind of went silent for a while. In fact, I just read an article because I almost forgot about that. In fact, I did forget about that. I was talking to somebody in the media yesterday about just being asked about the DOJ's investigation into the SBC, and she said, well, do you think this will be similar to the DOJ's investigation into the Catholic Church? And at first I was like, did they investigate the Catholic Church? It's so weird. Like,
it is,
that was such a huge deal at the time, but then years went by where it was just absolute crickets, and still you don't really hear anything about the Catholic Church. Isn't that weird?
Not. It's weird, but not unexpected.
No, I think people's memories are so stinking short.
Unexpected. People, I always say this, I've said it for years and years, people will believe what they want to believe. Mm-hmm. And once the big ruffle is over with, people will go back to believing what they want to believe about anything.
Absolutely right.
I don't care what it is.
And we didn't really plan for this episode because there's so much that's unknown right now.
Right.
With this investigation, who knows? I mean, we literally know nothing at this point. Except that the DOJ announced that they're
Right.
looking into the
And I think, if
SBC.
anything, we need to be pleased that it got this far.
Yeah.
That really. And the same with the Catholic Church. They opened up multiple cans of worms there to make people be more aware. Now, the majority of people aren't going to give a flip, really,
Nope.
when you think about it, because, like you said, years pass and the message is diluted. People forget.
It is.
Unless they were personally involved. And even then, I don't know, after so many years, people kind of want to forget. And in frustration, they just throw up their hands and say, let's go on.
Yep.
Nothing's going to happen about it anyway.
Yep.
And
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my prediction here, is that I think there's enough going on right now with the DOJ. We talked about this with some of our patrons in a private setting, but I think there really are a couple black eyes that the DOJ has right now.
They do.
And I think, they're really being scrutinized now for the FBI raid that they just initiated at Mar-a-Lago. And, and whatever, I don't know any details about that, and I'm not really that interested to look into it. But, I do know that I think it seems like, anyway, from articles that I've read, that they kind of maybe pulled the trigger a little bit too soon on that, or shouldn't have pulled the trigger at all.
Right.
And I think that's all going to come out through investigations. So, I think right now the DOJ, all the focus is on Mar-a-Lago and the FBI raid there. And so I think this is what I'm talking about, and what you're talking about.
Yes.
The SBC story is going to get overshadowed.
It will.
By
Absolutely,
this bigger
Jimmy.
story.
Yes.
And it's like this all the time. It's like there are these bombshells. I mean, this is one of the biggest bombshells.
The
DOJ looking into the Southern Baptist Church is a colossal deal.
But
it pales in comparison to what's going on right now within the DOJ.
Trump is a bigger deal to a lot of people. And what goes on in that house and in that between those walls, people want to know. They are dying to know. And that's going to overshadow anything.
Which is sad, because if you look at the sheer numbers, look at the volume of people who've been abused, innocent children.
Yeah.
These
I
aren't,
know that. It's
never mind the adults, the children that have been abused and still continue to be abused within the SBC. You're talking probably hundreds of thousands of victims.
I think about it all the time. I also think about the Catholic Church and all the abuse and cover-ups years and years and years and years. Yet, and I know several people who are staunch Catholics, they will not say a word against that. They have not yet. They simply have not. It's as though, don't touch it, don't go there, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Didn't touch me in any way, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
I've heard this. Every church, every institution has its flaws.
Yeah. So I want to talk about, I want to talk about this one aspect, not the investigation itself, because honestly, I'm not an attorney. I have no idea what the process looks like. I do know that Boz Trevijan has been posting about the one thing that the DOJ brings that this independent investigation didn't bring is that the DOJ has subpoena power.
Right.
So, most likely they're going to subpoena, all kinds of
documents and records that will show what we suspect and what we kind of know anyway.
So that is
cover-ups, years and years and years of cover-ups.
Right. And that will happen if this investigation doesn't stall out.
Right.
Kind of like it did with the Catholic Church. And maybe it didn't stall out with the Catholic Church. Maybe the DOJ is just kind of playing it really silent on purpose. I don't really know. Okay, so for that part of it, it's anybody's guess. And I'm not an attorney. I know nothing about law, so I'm not even going to pretend on that side of it to make any predictions.
Well, there's so many complications and loopholes and
I am a church leader. I am going to make a prediction on not the Catholic Church. Well, we could include the Catholic Church, but the SBC. I am going to make a prediction on whether I'm hopeful or not for the SBC. And I'm going to tell you point blank, hands down, I think that the one almost probably lone voice who's been speaking out against the SBC is Krista Brown. Krista Brown, I honest to God feel like she is on an island by herself saying they're not going to change. They're not going to get it. They're still not getting it. And I feel like every other advocate out there they're like, rah, rah, this is huge news for the SBC. And this is a bombshell, the Houston, why can't I think today? My brain is really shut off. Rob Downen, from the Houston Chronicle. Rob wrote this bombshell series on the SBC, and at the time people were like, this is going to be the catalyst for change within the SBC. And I think there's this superficial hope that they're going to get it. They're going to change leadership, and they're going to get it.
Institutions that big, that solid, that ingrained in power and money. It's going to take a lot more than an investigation to change things.
Yeah, and I don't think even the DOJ looking into the SBC is going to change them.
I don't think so.
And it's not just the power and the money and the control. It's the really horrific bad theology that's so inherent, and it's the F word. The F word, forgiveness, you cannot just pluck that out of their theology and make them realize, look, forgiveness in the Bible really, really, really is always in context. There is no such thing in the Bible as unconditional forgiveness.
And I will tell you,
it doesn't exist.
The more time plays out, the more that F word will play in, because let's face it, people don't like digging up stuff from the past as a general rule, and they want to let it alone. Just it's easier to say, I forgive you. Let's move on.
But it's not just the moving on part, it's the inviting known predators not only into the church, which I think is a horrific theology. I think that's the stupidest thing that we can do, is to take somebody who we know has patterns of lying, stealing, cheating, deceiving, violating children in the worst possible way, of inviting them back into the church. That's stupidity.
You and I don't get it.
That's not forgiveness. That's stupidity.
Those who have been involved with abuse in any way, shape, or form will never get it. Others will never get it the other way.
Right.
I'm telling you. They will never, because they're going to see what they want to see. And a smooth talker is a smooth talker.
Yep.
And they can pretty much talk you into or out of
I'm
anything.
reformed. I've learned my lesson. I'm so broken over what I've done. And after all, doesn't Jesus tell you to forgive me?
And who am I to judge? I can't judge your heart. And and it's like,
so not only are they inviting them into the church, they're inviting them into the right leadership positions. They're inviting them into the pulpit. They're still doing it. And if you don't believe me, look at Megan and Dominic Benninger's website, Baptist Accountability, and look at that growing list. Every single day, they're adding names to that list.
Don't you think, Jimmy, that some of this has, some of where we are in society as a whole has had a big bearing on all of this? In other words, society is where anything goes right now. There are no real parameters around anything, really. If you stop and think about it, everything it's like a rubber band that snapped and let everything that was being held together all let loose. And right now, the word on the street is love everybody, forgive everybody, and just find your place wherever makes you feel good. Do it. If it doesn't make you feel good, don't do it. And
Yeah, I mean, it's hyper grace.
It is. Yeah.
It's hyper grace.
Right.
So I want to read this post that Krista Brown put on Twitter. See the date. That was August 13th. So she put in quotations, mistakes. Grr. It's as if they're simply incapable of not minimizing these horrific wrongs, crimes, and cover-ups. Bingo, bingo, bingo.
When I read
And we
that,
really
it's
need to
like,
have
yeah.
Krista back on the show.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yes.
She is spot on. She said 14 top SBC officials signed off on it and none saw the problem. Grr. It's a minimizing and image repair statement in other ways as well. Check it out. And then she has hashtag this is the SBC. And this is their release form on August 12th. This is their announcement after the DOJ announced that they were investigating the SBC. So I'm just going to read the first couple paragraphs. The SBC Executive Committee recently became aware that the Department of Justice has initiated an investigation into the Southern Baptist Convention and that the investigation will include multiple SBC entities. Individually and collectively, each SBC entity is resolved to fully and completely cooperate with the investigation. While we continue to grieve and lament past mistakes related to sexual abuse. And that's that line. These were not mistakes. They were anything but mistakes.
Right.
And if you read Krista Brown's book,
Oh, yeah. Oh.
she has one example of thousands
Right. Right.
where she was intentionally targeted.
Right.
She was threatened with lawsuits. The SBC sent their top attorneys, powerful attorneys, after her. They did everything in their power to shut her up and to shut her down. And Krista was the pain in the butt that never went away. And Krista is still here knocking on the SBC's door.
Thankfully.
Absolutely.
But isn't it easier to read over that word mistake?
We made some mistakes in the past, but we're learning.
Right.
And that's the whole,
Right.
the whole thrust of this letter is
Exactly.
we're learning. We still have a lot to learn, but we're making these big changes. So, they said, while we continue to grieve and lament past mistakes related to sexual abuse, current leaders across the SBC have demonstrated a firm conviction to address those issues of the past and are implementing measures to ensure they are never repeated in the future. Baloney, baloney, baloney. That is the biggest line of bull crap that I've ever heard. And I'll tell you how I know that. In 2019, I wrote a blog post saying that I was talking about caring well and how they still coddle sex abusers.
Right.
J.D. Greer's church, the Summit Church, I put a link to their policy on sex abuse.
remember that
Registered
blog
sex
post.
offenders.
Right.
And they called them brother, and it was, or friend. We absolutely, basically they're pouring over them. We lament that this happened, and we're here to shepherd you, and the church is on a need-to-know basis. And by the way, they don't need to know that you're a registered sex offender. And it's this whole policy, and I absolutely ripped it to shreds. I clicked on that link again just to check. And I'm like, maybe after that got a lot of attention because Religion News Service, RNS, the biggest religious paper, I think, in the world, picked up my blog post and wrote a whole article on it. On the SBC and their soft stance towards registered sex offenders, how they let them in the church and keep it all hush hush with these disgusting covenant agreements. And so I thought, well, maybe with that kind of attention, maybe they at least pulled it down. They're probably still implementing it, but maybe they pulled that off of their website. Nope, there it is. Absolutely unchanged.
So what does that tell you? Exactly what you said.
That's still their policy.
Exactly what you
J.D.
said.
Greer's church, Summit Church, their policy, current policy right now with registered sex offenders is we don't tell the church. This agreement's between the leaders and the sex offender, and we're going to welcome you in because that's what Jesus would want us to do. This line that churches are, we're really, we've proved ourselves. We've demonstrated, current leaders across the SBC have demonstrated a firm conviction to address those issues of the past and are implementing measures to ensure they are never repeated in the future. Bull crap. It's not true.
I think of another word, but yeah,
It's
it
not
isn't true.
They're not going to learn.
I'm thinking of in the Bible when it talks about pruning and cutting off the branches. That's what needs to be done here. There needs to be a pruning and a cutting off of
Yeah.
so much bad, evil, nasty, and rebirth. But until that's done, you're going to have the same old, same old. Let's face it. Same old, same old.
Yeah.
And if that
it's rinse and
policy
repeat.
is still standing, yeah, I like that. Rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
If that policy is still standing, you know what it is. I know what it is. They didn't even attempt to reword it.
Well, here's the reason
bit.
I'm so fired up over this is because this whole Caring Well dog and pony show, which I thought was a total bogus from the very beginning. I firmly stand by that. I think Caring Well was nothing but a ploy to make it look like they're implementing changes.
Yeah.
They're not. It's all rhetoric, just like this letter. It's all rhetoric. And there is no meaningful action yet that's been taken.
I
It's
will
not,
still
period.
say again, it's going to be, if it was done properly, would be a domino effect. The big boys would go down. One by one by one by one.
Well, the first
by
thing they would
one.
do is resign and say, we have
Right.
no business
They
being
would-
in any kind of
right.
church
You
leadership.
Clean out the big boys who were responsible
Mm-hmm.
for this. Of course, then that means their money goes, their power, their authority,
Mm-hmm.
their stand. They're respected, revered, idolized by some. Let's face it, Jimmy. They're not going to do it.
Mm-hmm. No.
I can tell. I mean, we all know.
And they're
that.
entitled. They feel like,
Right.
they feel like they're entitled to these positions because after all, look how much good the church is doing. We're sending missionaries overseas and, the SBC has 13 million members.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest denomination. And look at all the good that we're doing. And if we step down...
Don't look on this side at all the harm that was done.
Yeah,
Only
those
look-
are just mistakes.
Right, those
yeah,
were
I mean,
mistakes. Don't look
those
at
are
them.
mistakes. We're
but
going to
look
move on.
at this. We can all do that. We can do that with our very lives. I think of how
crazy.
many
This is
abusers do
insanity.
that. Look at how wonderful I am. Just don't look at that part.
Yeah.
Don't look- But this is on a huge scale. A huge
It's
scale.
massive. And,
But I really, I'm with you. I don't expect anything big to happen.
I don't expect
Not right now.
anything at all
No.
to happen. I think
No.
it's going to be more of the same. I think they're going to
Yeah.
put more statements out. It's kind of like they've been caught with their fingers in the pie, and they're like, "Oh, well, look over there," and then they just keep sticking their fingers right back in the pie. They're not going to stop.
There.
They
They're
can't
gonna
stop. They're incapable.
lick them off a little bit, but their fingers are still there. It's not going to change.
No, they're incapable of change, and that's. I mean,
And I don't think we're being pessimistic about it. We're just being realistic.
yeah,
Very realistic.
I mean, when you have repeated child rapists who, I mean, never mind people who, we had a whole discussion on the MAPS, the minor attracted persons who claim that they don't have any victims. Leave them aside. Forget about that for a second. We're talking
People that
convicted,
have done, right.
registered, serial sex offenders who did this over and over and over. The lying, the manipulating, the deceiving, and raping of little children who can't even tie their own shoes. And now your policy at the very top, at Summit Church, at J.D. Greer's church, your policy is, we're going to set an example. We're going to have this Caring Well workshop, the training program for all of our churches. And your example of what to do with registered sex offenders is keep it a secret from the church.
Right.
Have this private covenant agreement between the leaders and the sex offender and
terrible.
let them back in the church anyway. That's
One of the
insanity.
worst things I've ever heard.
That's
It is.
stupidity.
Yeah, it is.
And so when that's what's going on at the very top, pardon me for not believing that that the leaders haven't demonstrated a firm conviction to address those issues of the past and are implementing measures to ensure that they're never repeated in the future. I don't buy it. Not for a second do I buy it.
we need more voices. We need more irritation. We need more, if you want to call it that, voices that will not stop, that
Yeah.
will not forget, that will not allow silence. And that takes effort, time, energy, all of the above. You have to remain, steadfast in your mission, and a lot of people fizzle out. Let's face it. Once again, we're used to living an easy life, all of us. Don't ruffle my feathers and I won't ruffle yours. Don't shake up my boat and I won't shake up yours. True or not?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely true.
when we sit on a church pew, when we go and we hear a nice lesson, we walk out feeling good. We truly do. We don't want to deal with this stuff.
No,
And we really don't.
We won't name the mistakes in the past.
Yeah.
We'll just
And
look to the future, and
They know that.
things are getting better.
They're banking on that. Put out messages like that and it appeases tons of people. They read that and they say, well, I knew it. I knew the church they'd be working on that. And they are. They're the leaders. Let them deal with it.
I think that's what's astonishing to me is, seeing the positive responses from people from this letter and the announcements that the SBC keeps putting out. They're putting this stuff out and people are like, oh my goodness, see, they're finally getting it. I can assure you they're not. And all you have to do is look at their policy. And again, most importantly, look at their policy on what to do with known serial registered sex offenders.
Crazy.
If
Me
ever
crazy.
if ever you want to know if a church gets it, look at what their policy is on serial abusers. Do they welcome them into the church, or do they say, you know what? Here's the line in the sand.
Right.
You have proved yourself that you're not a safe person. You have proved that you're incredibly skilled at lying and deceiving. You're incredibly skilled at keeping these crimes a secret. You have such skill that you can dance around any person and get to your victims without them ever knowing it.
I don't see them saying it.
No.
No.
And therefore, you have proved that you're not trustworthy to be here. And never mind that your presence alone, by being here, is going to trigger all of the survivors that are in our care.
Yes.
And we're not going to do that to them.
Right.
So all you have to do is look to a church's policy on how they handle repeat serial child rapists. Look at their policy on that. And you decide for yourself whether they're a safe church or not, whether they get it or not.
Yeah.
You tell me. Don't let me tell you. You tell me.
Well, this is telling me they sure didn't get it.
No, the SBC does not get it. The fact that they're calling these mistakes.
So what's our draw? What is our lesson, so to speak, to learn from this? I mean, what do we do with this mess?
I think the big takeaway, at least for me, I mean, this has always been my stance and it still is that church members need to regain some of that power and authority that's been taken from them unrightfully by church leaders. I also wrote an article, a few years ago, that says church leaders don't have the amount of authority that they think they do.
Right.
And it's this idea that we're the decision makers.
Right.
We're the ones who everybody has to answer to. And if anything gets done in the church, it's got to go through the leadership. That's authoritarianism.
It is. I'm shaking my head.
That's not how Jesus led people.
The whole system makes me crazy. It really does.
Yeah.
We, the people, are responsible for allowing that hierarchy. But it's time. I wish we'd all wise up and say enough is enough. No more.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah, so I think church members need to start calling out churches, and I mean, it still baffles me that nobody, to my knowledge, nobody within J.D. Greear's church is calling out that crap policy. Why are parents not standing up at Summit Church saying, "Are you going to address this stupid policy that says we're going to keep the church members in the dark
I still say
when we have
because
registered. You're not even going to tell us when there's a registered
Right.
sex offender in the
it's
church.
not popular to go against authority. It takes energy. Again, it takes time. People are fearful of lawsuits. The whole big ball of wax.
It's crazy.
It is. And people have cowered in a corner and allowed things to be.
Yeah.
Just allowed everything to go on.
I mean, I think that's really what has to happen. If there's ever going to be change, and who cares what denomination it is, SBC aside, no matter what denomination you're in,
Right.
the way that we're going to make churches safe, I think the only way that we're going to make churches safe is by stripping that power and authority, that superficial power and authority from church leaders and putting it back into the hands of the people where it really
Right.
belongs. And
You
say,
know-
we're not going to sit here and take this
Right.
abuse saying that you guys make all the policy on safety when you guys don't have a clue about keeping
What you're
people
doing,
safe.
how to keep. I was thinking with all the registries that are out there, with the way we can now check out criminals, we each have a responsibility. We really do, of doing that. And we also personally have a responsibility of telling others, I feel. And
I agree.
Yeah, if more of us did that, and we can pass that literature out. We can do that. And if we did that, these so-called secrets wouldn't be secrets anymore.
That's right.
And maybe at that point in time, we'll see some change.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this too. I mean, I've encouraged people many, many, many times, lay church members, that they'll say, "Well, what do? We have a registered sex offender in the church, but the leadership won't tell. They refuse to inform the church and let them know, and we feel like we're completely stuck. What do we do?" And we've talked to leaders, and they said, "Absolutely, we will not make this public because Jesus forgives sins and blah 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 blah." And they come back to me and say, "Well, what do we do?" And I say, same thing that you said.
Yep.
Get on the internet,
Yes,
click,
yeah.
print, hang it on the
Yeah.
bulletin board at the
Yeah.
church.
I agree.
You have a responsibility
Yes, we do. We do.
to go around the leadership. There's a reason why this is a public registry. There's a reason why in all 50 states it's a felony offense for registered sex offenders to not re-register and keep up with that registry every so many months or whatever it is that they have to give updated status on their job, their location, and a photograph. It's a felony for sex offenders to not
keep up with that.
with their information
Help
on the
me
sex
out.
offender registry.
Do sex offenders have to live a certain distance away from?
It varies from state to
Okay.
state.
I thought
Florida's
so.
the strictest state.
Okay.
But then you have other states, like I know here, I looked up in Pennsylvania, and there's no restriction
Yeah.
within schools. We actually,
That's what
if you look at the sex offender registry in our town, you'll find a whole cluster of them right over there by the high school. There's a whole street.
We
where
have
they're
a lot of work
clustered
to
together.
do, all of us. We have a lot of work to
So
do.
yeah,
We really do.
It's crazy, but we
do.
have an obligation, we have a duty to keep people safe, even when our church leaders refuse to do it. And I would love to see legislation passed that makes it illegal for church leaders to circumvent the law and to purposely, if you can prove that they purposely hide a public sex offender registry, I think that ought to be a criminal offense.
Amen. I think that's
Who do
great.
they think they are to circumvent the law? And especially for a tier 3 sex offender.
Right.
A tier 3 sex offender in Pennsylvania, and I again, this varies from state to state, but state police are required to put a bulletin out when a tier 3 sex offender moves within a mile radius of any
there was
youth-serving
something
organization.
like
So
that, yeah.
daycares,
I knew
churches.
there was something like that.
I've had state
Okay.
police knock on our door and hand a
Okay.
bulletin and
To
say,
let
"Hey,
you
we have a
know,
tier
yeah.
3
Okay.
sex offender
I thought there
that's
was
living
something like that.
within a mile
Right.
radius of
Okay.
the church."
Right.
Now,
Okay.
if they're going to that much trouble,
Right. There's a
to
reason
notify
for it.
people,
There's a reason for it.
who
Yes.
does the church think they are?
Right. They think above.
To go out of their way to keep that
No,
hidden.
We need to get that changed.
So,
We do.
yeah, that's my thing. I mean,
People, we have a lot of work to do, and it begins with each of us, really.
Yeah.
And us taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Because if we leave it up to these institutions, or if we leave it up to the DOJ or whatever, it's not going to happen.
No,
It's got
not.
to start with us.
Yeah.
The Christus of this world has to start that way.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. We'll leave you with that. I do think that change can come, but
I do too, but it's not
we have-
going to happen in any big way until we, the people, as I want to say, in multitude, speak up and start taking action.
Absolutely. It's got to be grassroots. It's got to
Yeah.
start with the
Right.
people and forget about the leadership.
Right.
They're so toxic and poisoned.
Amen. Yes.
I don't see any of the leadership in the
Nope.
SBC or really any denomination standing up and saying, "All right, we are really taking definitive action."
No.
I just don't see it. I don't. So
We're not seeing it. So, yeah. Up
anyway,
to us.
yeah.
Up to us.
But I
That's-
think we have a whole
Yes.
lot of power
do.
to make changes when the leadership won't. So thank you guys for tuning in. That's our take, and we'll catch you next episode.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.